Welcome to Relationship Nation. This is Freddie and Wayne Martin. I'm Freddie.
And I'm Wayne.
So today we're going to talk about 3 different modalities of communication that most of the population does have. There are 3 primary ways, and it's really important when you're in a relationship to understand what your partner's modality is, because if you don't have the same, you have to be patient and kind and understanding about the way that they're communicating with you if they're different than yours.
Right. Well, first off, when you're in that romantic stage of your relationship, you look past that so many times. But later on, as things calm down and you're starting to work together and really live life together, you're going to find that it's going to be amplified one way or the other, unless you're both have similar modalities in which you communicate and take information in.
So let's talk about the modalities. Why don't you talk about yours?
Okay, I tend to be a visual type of person, also kinesthetic. We want to remind you that you're a combination of everything, but you're going to have one that's going to lead most of the time. So I tend to be visual, and then kinesthetic is secondary, auditory is my third. But the thing that happens, especially with Freddie and I, is I'm very creative and I like to talk about it. And because I'm a visual, I'm describing everything that I see in my mind and outside of me. And it absolutely drives her crazy sometimes because she's an auditory, which an auditory is very much more methodical in their approach to learning things or executing things, where visual is like, let's get it done yesterday a lot of the times.
Yeah.
That's a big generalization, but it's probably a fairly accurate one.
And the good news is that 65% of the population is primarily visual. So if you're visual, you have a really good chance of meeting another visual. And another thing where you can recognize a visual is their use of their language. They say, look at this, did you see that? Oh, all that kind of stuff. And they're very rapid and their brain moves very quickly. So they go, like Wayne said, from 1 to 1,000, just like that. And when you're trying to follow their story, sometimes they're telling a story, and then all of a sudden they're telling another story, and they never finish that story. And you're going, okay, well, where are we? All right, I'm not quite sure what we're talking about now. And so I actually have friends that they're both visuals, and those 2 women can talk simultaneously really, really fast, and they understand what the other person's saying. And I'm just going, hold on.
And all the information is connected somehow.
Somehow. It's like, wow.
Oh, I know. I love visuals too.
And so in my case, because I'm primarily auditory, that's what I go to. I'm auditory visual with some kinesthetic. For me, being auditory, I learn by hearing. So I pay a lot of attention to lectures. I can hear things, I can retain that. It is good to take notes because I do have some of that visual part of me, but mostly it's that I'm logical. I like to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instead of 1 to 1,000 like Wayne. And the other thing is that my language is more about, I hear what you're saying, let's talk tomorrow, instead of see you tomorrow.
Well, I'm painting a picture of...
Yeah, you're painting a picture. I'm using logic. It was interesting when we first met because Wayne's the kind of traveler who he just takes a pocket full of money and just goes. And I'm like, I have every single thing planned, when we're leaving, what we're doing, packing our bags, what we're eating, how we're getting home, who's picking us up. And so it's a very different way of communicating and processing through the brain. Another thing about auditory people is you can recognize them because normally they have really modulated voices. They talk at a slower pace because their brain works slower than a visual. The visual is like fast, 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 fast. Auditory is kind of in the middle. And then the third one is the kinesthetic person. And there's only 5% of the population that's kinesthetic.
Well, that would be purely kinesthetic.
Purely kinesthetic.
Again, we want to remind you that you're going to be probably at least a couple of them that are pretty strong.
Yeah.
For instance, as an athlete or a worker or somebody that handles things, you're going to tend to have a kinesthetic type of mind at different times.
Yeah.
So
And what a kinesthetic person is that they have their brain runs the slowest. They're definitely not stupid at all. They just think slower. And the reason why is because they take everything visual, auditory, and then they bring it into their body. They process it, and then it comes out their mouth. So when you're talking to a kinesthetic person, a lot of times there's a lot of ums and ahs or pauses. And you're just like, okay, maybe we'll get to the end of the story. It's just the total opposite of visual. There's like boom, then auditory is in the middle, and then you have this kinesthetic that's really, really slower. And what happens is, in order to be polite to a kinesthetic person, you have to let them process and speak, and sometimes it's challenging.
Well, a lot of times it's more about taking the information in and seeing how you feel about it.
Right.
Trust and safety, a lot of times for a kinesthetic person is important. It takes time to do that, and so it's a process. How do I feel about this?
Yeah.
Well, you might have a lot of emotions about it, and it's going to be
True.
slower, and that's okay. For instance, now opposites attract a lot of times,
Yeah.
and so we had
Oh, yeah.
some friends
Yeah, well,
that
they actually were clients, and I taught this class. I was teaching a class just about this, and the lady came up to me, or didn't come up to me. She called me the next day, and she was in tears, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I've been married for like 40 years, and my husband is kinesthetic, and I'm highly visual." And she said, "Now I realize why I drive him nuts." And she said, "He drives me nuts." So she sat down with him and she explained to him exactly why they were disconnecting. And she sat in his lap because a kinesthetic needs to be touched. Touch is extremely important to a kinesthetic person. So she sat in his lap and apologized and cried. And she said it just like their hearts opened. And they just had this wonderful coming together because they really loved and respected each other. It was just so difficult for them to communicate effectively.
Right, until they knew what they were dealing with, and everything changed. So when you're looking for a partner, remember that that there can be differences in the way that you're going to process, they're going to process, and come from an area of respect and compassion and kindness and vice versa. And know that it's going to create some challenges potentially, especially when you're under stress. And that's life. I mean, you're going to have changes in your life. You're going to have to work through things, or you're going to communicate differently. But what's so cool is because you are different, it can become your strength and even your superpower. For Freddie and I, it's become our superpower. And I think it's really funny because a lot of times, because I'm constantly inventing things or different ideas, it drives her crazy. And it creates conflict, but a lot of times what happens is because she's so smart and logical about different things, it really makes me work harder to make sure that those are really great ideas or things that we want to do, and a lot of times they are. Well, I wouldn't say a lot of times, but it's become our superpower, and she's organized, and if you walked in her office, everything's put away basically, has a very distinct order. For me as a visual, I have it everywhere because it doesn't exist if I can't see it. Now that may just be me, but I think a lot of visuals can relate to that.
Yeah.
And the thing with a kinesthetic person, you can tell because they want everything to be familiar and comfortable. And it's a real giveaway.
Well, it's that ratty old chair that they've been sitting in for 20 years.
Pants with holes in them that are
they're
just
comfortable.
like, they feel like cashmere almost. They're so worn in.
So everything's about comfort to them. And yeah. So anyway, this is just a little quick thing about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and help you in your relationships. It's really important to know this. It's important you can use this with your friends and family too, because everything's a relationship, and it's very helpful. Like in my case, with my parents, they were both kinesthetic, and so being this auditory kid, I kept finishing their sentences and saying, well, she means to say that, and he's going to say that, because they were so slow, and I already knew what they were going to say, and that's extremely rude, and you never want to do that with a kinesthetic, and I learned my lesson. But anyway,
Right.
so
So when you're out there dating and you're looking for that special mate, have some fun with this. Also, have some fun if you have children or coworkers. You can use this in business. It's all great. It's just a great way to build better rapport, better communication. And I hope this really helps. And we'll see you soon.